Hello and welcome to a joint presentation with Cerium and Sec1. This presentation will demonstrate how attackers can use shared domain passwords to compromise a network, and also how Cerium can mitigate that risk. The demo today will be in two sections, the first part by Ben Burns of Sec1, and the second part by Kev Pierce of Cerium. So I'll hand over to Ben now. Ben is a penetration tester at Sec1, and Sec1 are a trust and check accredited provider of penetration testing. So Ben.
So my name is Ben, and I'm going to go over something that we find on most of the penetration tests that we do, and that is why password reuse equals domain domination. We see this quite a lot in our pen tests, and when I've reported to our clients, I reported the high impact and the medium probability. It is quite a severe thing, and it is something you should be looking at. So the scenario that we're going to go through is quite a common one. The challenge is domain admin in 15 minutes. Commonly, you'll see that IT support teams and network admins will use the same common password for local administrator accounts across the network. This is used across multiple servers, and you'll also see it across multiple clients, because clients are often built off a common image. I'm going to explain why this can be a problem. Domain admin in 15 minutes, the 4 steps that we'll go through is obtaining a list of domain admins from your domain controller, compromising a member server or workstation, this is the first stage of exploitation, discover hosts with these reused admin credentials. Then what we're going to look to do is escalate our privileges from a standard local admin user to a domain administrator. So this is our target network. The attack's on the right in red. What we've got is quite a common setup: web servers, databases, file servers, and a domain controller. The domain that we've got is the pay-me domain. So the first stage that we're going to do is we're going to identify the domain controller, and we're going to dump a list of domain admin and other information from the domain controller. It's information about the domain. So the tool that we use to do this is called MBT enum, and this is an example of some of the output that you'll get from MBT enum. As you can see there, I've stripped it down a bit to make it a bit clearer. But you've got a list of domain admins, and on the pay-me domain we've only got one domain admin, and that's the administrator. So once the attackers perform this enumeration on the domain controller, he's then going to start looking at possible points to enter the network through exploitation. So what we standardly do is we check for low-hanging fruit. And these are common vulnerabilities that you'll see, such as SQL servers with weak cred, weak Tomcat passwords, unprotected JBoss DMX consoles, local admin accounts with weak credentials, such as password 1, and common Microsoft flaws, for example, MSO 867, which gives you command execution systems. So hackers will always look for the easiest route. In this example, I'm going to discuss Apache Tomcat. Often you'll see it configured with weak or default credentials. There's no account lockout policy by default, so you can usually guess that the administrator account is going to have a username of admin, and then you can just run password grinding attacks for as long as you wish. Commonly it runs as entry-based system, and you'll also see a lot of the time that clients aren't aware that Apache Tomcat's running on a server. They've had a third party come in, store a business application, and in the background that's managed by Apache Tomcat. So this is the Apache Tomcat admin sort of prompt, so to speak. And what we're going to want to do as an attacker is break into here. Tools that we can use to do this are Metasploit, Hydra, and Medusa. This is a screenshot of Metasploit being used in a simple password grinding attack to gain access to the Tomcat manager interface. As you can see here, we've identified a username of Tomcat with a password as secret, one of the defaults we'll often see. So once we've gained access to the manager for Apache Tomcat, we can now load a malicious simple JSP application that allows us to execute commands in the context of the web server. As you can see here, I've issued the command who am I, and I'm running Center Approach System. As you can see, we've now got control of the web server. So what the attacker is going to now want to do is dump the SAM system file from the web server to try and get the administrator's password hash. So to retrieve the local administrator's password hash, we can use a variety of tools. Metasploit will do this, regback, regedit will do this, samdump and pwdump. As regback and regedit are tools that have been built for Windows, we're going to use those in this example. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to retrieve the SAM file, system file, and then we use the system key in the system file to decrypt the SAM file, which will give us a list of all the password hashes for all local accounts. We can then use those in password cracking events. So simple commands to retrieve the SAM file, mount a share back to the attacker's machine, and use regsave to save the SAM and the system, as you can see in the screenshot. We can then use OPHcrack, which is a password cracking tool. We can use this to decrypt the encrypted SAM, as you can see here, and if you simply issue the command crack by clicking the crack button, we can then start a password cracking attack. As you can see here, the administrator is not using a particularly strong password, and it's only taken 19 seconds to crack, which you can see at the bottom right-hand side of the screenshot. And the administrator's password is password1. Now that the attacker has a password for a local admin account, he wants to check for local admin password reuse across multiple servers in the domain. Now, several tools can be used to do this: Metasploit, KaiMPX, and MBT Spade. Here's an example of KaiMPX. It's quite a simple command. This will work its way through the list of IPs that you give it, and it will just check to see whether the local admin account has a password of password1. You can see the output here, which says that we've got 3 hosts that share common admin credentials. Now we have access to 3 hosts on the primary domain, and now we'll want to start looking to see whether we can escalate our privileges to a domain admin. Now, I'm just going to quickly talk about Windows access tokens. They're used in Windows to describe the security context of the processor or thread. Now, this means that when you log into a computer, you will have these tokens. So any application you run will run with your user's privileges. As an attacker, we can exploit this, and we can exploit delegation tokens to basically migrate into a process and run with the permissions of, for example, the domain admin. This can be used for domain privilege exploration. So what this means, if a domain admin is logged in via remote desktop or locally, so what this means is if a domain admin logs onto a desktop or workstation using RDP or is logged on locally, domain administrative control can be gained easily by token impersonation. The tool we'll commonly use to try and find these domain admin tokens or these delegation tokens is find token. This is an example of the output and the command that will be issued. You use those admin credentials to find these tokens. Once we've found the token, we know which host we want to target for exploitation, and we'll attempt to gain a shell on that host using those admin credentials. So let's go into demo. So here I'm using Metasploit, and what I've got is I've got our target host, I've set our SMB password, and I've set our username here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exploit this host to gain a shell, and to give you an example of the tokens that we've got on here, I'm going to load a tool called Incognito. And I'm going to list the tokens by user. As we can see, we've got the PoneMe administrator account as a delegation token. Now, commonly what we do, or this is the old school technique, is you would impersonate that token, and that token would allow you to create your own domain admin account on the pay-me domain. Now, I prefer not to do this because it's not very stealthy, and commonly your clients will point out that you've created a domain admin account, and on occasion they will delete this. But there's a new tool called WCE, which will allow you to dump the plain text credential for any logged on user. And as you can see here, the administrator of the pay-me domain has a password of sec-1 path. Now I have the password for the pay-me administrator. I've now got full control of the domain. Just as a quick recap, any server that's passed the domain could potentially hand the attacker the keys to the kingdom. This could mean that any host that you have that sort of pops up every now and then. I once had a test where we did a full scan of the network and we didn't find any vulnerable hosts to any common exploit. And then we rescanned the network, and in the space of an hour, one machine had come live, and it was vulnerable to MSO 867. From there, because the client had password reuse, the whole network essentially came tumbling down, and we've got domain admin control. I've seen this on, it's like 99% of the tests that I've been on. I think there was one client who wasn't vulnerable to password reuse, and that was because they'd come up with a way where they had a common password that we shared, but they'd appended the host name to the end of the password for each host. The recommendation set a unique password for local administrator accounts for every single host on your domain. You can use password recording software to keep track of this, and all your passwords should be greater than 9 characters in length, be a mix of alphanumeric and non-alphanumeric characters.
Okay, so thanks, Ben. We'll move on to the second part of the web demonstration now. This part shows how Cerium can mitigate the issue that Ben has shown of shared domain credentials and make the job of an attacker or a tester like Ben that much more difficult. So I'll hand over to Kev Pearce, CTO of Cerium. Kev.
Okay, so thank you, Ben. What I'd like to do now is just talk through some of the functionality of Cerium and how we can help organizations defend against the reuse of passwords on devices and from shared accounts and from weak passwords which get used around organizations. So fixing all of this is quite simple, really. We just have to make sure there's no password reuse going on. We have to make sure that there's a unique admin password set up for each privileged user, whether that be an administrator, a personalized account for administrator on the network, or whether that's a generic local account on a device, particularly the administrator accounts on Windows devices. So the advantage of this is then if any of those endpoints is compromised, the passwords are not going to open the door to other devices on the network. Because if each password is unique per device, then you can't hop around from one to the next. So that stops that kind of traversing the network and being able to just walk around the network if the credentials are unique. The second thing is then to stop local logins with domain accounts, with domain admin accounts. So it shouldn't be common practice in organizations just to give everybody an IT domain admin rights, and then when they fix people with machines, they're logging onto those machines locally with full domain admin rights and leaving the password hashes and those cache credentials around the place. Compromised hashes of limited accounts then don't have full access to the network. So if you can control the rights and the level of access people need, really on a need-to-know basis, on a per-server basis, then those common rights aren't getting used across the network in a blanket fashion. Another step is to provide remote access to machines and provide local admin rights rather than full domain admin rights. If you don't need domain admin rights to perform a particular task or a job function for, say, somebody on the help desk, then there's no need to put all of the staff in the help desk into the domain admin groups. You can control their rights that they have on the network give them access with local admin rights, there are less full power hashes being used of those credentials being stored on machines, and therefore reducing the attack vectors of those hashes being compromised. Doing all of that, it may be simple, but it's easier said than done. People don't have the time to create unique accounts for every privileged user on every device, especially when they're then allowing third parties to come into their network to manage devices, or they have contractors and consultants coming in, working on devices as well. The easy route is always to have a shared password, but you keep it secret. You make sure people don't write it on post-it notes and leave it around the place. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a strong password. That doesn't mean that it's not going to be decrypted by some of the modern tools that we've seen Ben demonstrate. They can pick out simple passwords quite easily. Even passwords that organizations think are stronger, by replacing numbers with letters and adding meeting the password complexity rules, not always does that mean that the length of the passwords gets extended and it doesn't protect those password hashes from being reverse engineered. The second thing is then to frequently change those passwords. If somebody does manage to compromise a machine and gain copies of those password hashes, the only thing that then stops them being able to reveal those passwords is time. They allow their tools to run, they allow their botnets and clusters of machines to try and crack those passwords. It then just becomes a matter of time. But if you change those passwords on a regular basis, that window that an attacker has to decrypt and undo those password hashes dramatically decreases, and it gets to a point where if they can't do it within however many days the password's valid for, then it becomes irrelevant. The password can't be used anymore because it's been changed. So some of the things that we're trying to eradicate with all this, the shared accounts that get reused, default accounts that get left in place, those are the sorts of things that we're trying to mitigate and remove the use of those. Particularly common on machines which don't have links into Active Directory or use Radius or some other kind of authentication mechanism. Quite often, even simple switches on the network may have an admin account with a common password that's been reused in the standard build of the finance server. So it's not just compromising Windows machines that means you can get access to the domain access and compromise the whole network. It can be done through many, many different attack vectors and many, many different devices on the network. Most attackers are going by the theory that somewhere in an organization there's going to be a generic account, there's going to be a shared account, there's going to be password reuse. Ben's already iterated that he's seen that in all but one of his pen tests, that this is a weakness, a vulnerability. So we know this is something that we can, if we can mitigate this risk, we can make a substantial security improvement on the organization's security infrastructure. So, how does Cerium help in fixing all of this? So, the first thing that Cerium does is it takes over control of the generic or local accounts on devices and sets them up with a new unique password. So we do that unique password for every device, we take over those accounts, they're all then stored, locked away safe within Cerium. What that does in practice is it stops everybody from using those shared accounts to log in anymore. People don't know what those passwords are. It's not just a common account everybody knows and is common knowledge around the organization. That direct shared access account can then be removed completely. So that's the first step. The second step is then to ensure that all privileged user access to devices is done through personalized accounts. So not only does this meet with compliance and it gives you traceability of who's making changes and who's accessing what devices, but it also means that you can assign privileges at a role-based level per individual. You can make sure that the first-line help desk have the correct level of rights that they need to do to manage systems, and they're not just domain admins across the board. What Cerium also then does is it acts as a central proxy, as a gateway to get to devices, to manage them, which means you've got a single point of control for all of this access, and you've got the ability to audit and see what's going on with those connections from a central place. So it really does put you in control of this privileged user connections that are going on, and they're not just free-for-all connections around the network. With all these complex passwords, with them being changed on a regular basis and automatically being refreshed by Cerium, you may think that that might be a bit of a problem then for admins actually doing their job and accessing the devices. Well, the next thing that Cerium does to get over that point is the fact that we provide single sign-on for connections to devices, and we do this by allowing admins to search using nice, clear, easy business terms, find the right device, and get single signed on to that device using the long, strong, complex password, which is getting changed every week or every month. So we're not inhibiting the sysadmins from doing their job, but we are adding that security behind the scenes. So the passwords are automatically refreshed on the devices that Cerium is looking after. Those passwords are, as long as you want to make them up to the longest that those devices can support, they're randomly generated, which means any kind of dictionary attack isn't going to find those passwords easily. They're long, they're complex, they're not using numbers to replace letters, so all of those kind of swapping techniques and the sort of rainbow table approaches go out the window. So it makes for very strong, I won't say uncrackable, but difficult to crack passwords. The only thing you need is time, and the fact that they're changed on a frequent basis removes that time aspect as well. Cerium can also allow for legacy accounts to be spotted around the network and removed, so there aren't accounts lying around from ex-employees or ex-staff who may have access still into the network somehow or may be able to gain access still, so they can be eradicated. And the last thing that Cerium can also do is make sure that we know what's going on in these connections. So admins can be shown very clearly that their sessions are being recorded, everybody knows what's going on, you've got an audit trail of the activity, and it shows everything in place, and is all controlled within the central control of Cerium. So, a quick demo to show this in action then. So, the first thing you do with Cerium is you log in with your desktop client down here, and you can log in here with your standard user account within your Active Directory, or this could be radius-based and have two-factor authentication thrown in here as well. This is your single of your single sign-ons. So you sign in here, and this is then authorizing you and approving your access to devices. Once you log in, what Cerium does is it sends down to the desktop client a list of all the devices that you're allowed to gain access to. So they're given quite nice, clear display names. It means you can search within the desktop client here to find the right device, know the right device you're looking for. Then when you want to gain access to that device, you've got the tools that you need to manage that device underneath it, and you can click and gain access to those tools as well. Another thing you'll see here is there's a list of other tasks here. Cerium also allows you to take that role as the administrator and package them up into tasks. So again, negating the need to give everybody full domain admin rights, controlling the number of people with those privileged accounts, and instead package up some tasks that maybe the first line and second line help desk can do without needing direct access to devices, without needing that level of privilege in a direct connection. So if I wanted to now go and remote desktop onto my server here, I can open up my connection. Straight away, I get a single signed-on connection coming through to this server. I'll just rescale it so we can see what's going on. You'll see here that I've been logged on with a personalized account. So this is pfk_admin. So this is an account that Cerium has automatically created for me on this device. It's set the password of that to be long, strong, and complex, and it's set it to be the right level of access I need for this server. In this case, it's a local admin. At the same time as this is going on, again, you can see this red box, and that's showing the recording aspect of Cerium so that the administrators know what's going on in the managing of the servers and the connections through to the devices. So I'll just end that connection there. So likewise, for doing it for remote desktop, Cerium supports many different methods of accessing and managing different devices. It could be command line into infrastructure devices, in this case a load balancer, but it could be switches, routers. Again, all devices which are common attacks for attackers to attack within a network. again, what they're going for is those admin accounts, password reuse on those devices, and then reusing those passwords elsewhere around the network. Again, Cerium is creating unique passwords for all the accounts, but there isn't not one password is reused within Cerium's architecture. Equally, we support connections to web-based devices as well. So again, rather than allowing a remote desktop connection to a server and then somebody using that remote desktop connection to fire up a browser and manage an application on it, Cerium can be acting as a proxy for connections going to those applications, again, recording what's going on with the browser and providing access using a personalized account and controlling long, strong, complex passwords for those accounts as well. And yeah, that's a quick run through there of how Cerium can help control the levels of access, control what people can do on devices, and then ultimately negate the risk of those shared accounts and those weak passwords being used around the network.
Okay, thanks very much, Kev. And thanks very much for listening to this joint presentation from Sec1 and Cerium. More information is available at the website, www.sec-1.com and www.cerium.com. So please contact us if you would like to discuss further anything raised during the demonstration. We hope you found the presentation interesting and useful, and we look forward to speaking with you again soon. Thanks very much.